Good morning. My name is Beth Bedore, and as you can see, I have something to do with kidney disease and kidney wellness. Well, today we're going to talk about how to become resilient. And because I've had kidney disease and I have had two transplants, I have had to be resilient. I have learned how to be resilient in life. And I'd like to talk to you about that today. From going through that experience of dialysis and two transplants and not giving up hope and having faith and just continuing the journey, I have learned to make my life easier. And one way to make your life easier is when you can go with the flow, when you can stop resisting and become resistant, right? You're no longer resisting things, you're allowing them to flow. In our lives, we usually have a judgment: is this good or bad? When we have an experience. And when we go through an experience that we feel brings up negative emotions, negative things that may be happening to us spiritually, mentally, physically, we don't know why. Sometimes we don't know why these things happen to us. But I believe, it is one of my beliefs, that the universe is always for us. So for some reason, I was meant to stay here on earth and to continue to live life as fully as I can with kidney, what I call dis-ease. My body is out of balance with itself, out of harmony. And in some realms, when I look up Louise Hayes, she says that kidneys have to do with fear. So I have practiced looking fear straight in the eyes and realize, is this a real fear, or is this something that I'm assuming or that I'm making up? Now, if I'm out walking downtown Asheville and I see one of the black bears, I'm not going to go up and pet it, right? That's crazy. And there is going to be a little bit of fear there. So my action would be is to try to get as far away from that bear as I can. If my car is there, to get in my car or to get into a place of business and not go over and poke at the bear, right? So there's a big difference between where is this fear coming from? Is it a real primal fear? Somebody's chasing me, that kind of thing, or is it an assumption in the future that this will happen to me, right? So life will get easier when we are stronger in life and we are more resilient. Now, what do you think are some qualities that make you resilient? All right? What do you think? What does resilience mean to you? I believe it has to do with values and the quality of your life. If you are resilient, like I said earlier, your life is going to go with the flow so much easier than if you continue to resist. If you continue to go back in the past and say, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. Now, the past happens to us, and we can bring those good memories with us. But when we're bringing all the negative stuff and the negative emotions and the negative experiences with us, that doesn't help us to be resilient. That just brings us to the place of still feeling those emotions, especially when we continue to tell those stories. We continue to go through that process of remembering how it felt, remembering how our bodies felt, remembering what we're thinking. So you can go back and learn the lessons, and you can have the memories, but let's stick with that, not bring all that garbage with us, right? All that trash with us that just eats up our nervous system and makes us depressed. And in order to be resilient, we need to move past anxiety, because anxiety has to do with fear of the future. What's going to happen in the future? And most of the time we make up what's going to happen in the future. It's not a good thing. As well, this happened to me and my first kidney gave out, and oh my goodness, and then I got a second one. When is this one going to give out? That kind of attitude, right? So when you start planning a happy future, what you desire in the future, what you want in the future, and start creating that story rather than the anxiety story, again, you'll be more resilient and life will be more let's say peaceful. Um, you'll learn to go with the flow. I'm not saying you're going to not run into bumps and snags and struggles and challenges, but you'll meet them with more grace and more ease. As we mature, I like to say, rather than aging or getting older, we have more life experiences to go back and say, oh, yeah, in my toolbox, I remember that when this story came up, when this situation came up in life, I used these tools to become a victor in that situation rather than a victim. And if I was a victim, I've learned, well, what can I do if I come up in that situation next time? Like if I'm in college and I flunk a test, well, am I going to flunk a test in the future? Am I going to have anxiety about flunking in the future? Or am I going to learn things that I can do so I won't be likely to fail in the future? Then I can pass with flying colors. Studying more, having a study accountability buddy, going to get a tutor, going to talk to the teacher. Any of those things plus more will help to get you to the desired result rather than worrying about possibly failing again, right? So that comes up to being resilient again. And a lot of it has to do with perception in life about what you're experiencing and what you're going through, your situation, and your perception of yourself and of the world. Is the world against you? Is it everybody's against you? The world is corrupt. This is all bad. Or is it that you're perceiving the world as safe and that the universe is for you? You know, is the glass half empty? Is the glass half full? Or is it refillable? If you're resilient, you're going to think that you're going to believe, not only think, but believe that it is refillable. So anytime that you lose a job, get divorced, have a situation in your life that you feel is a quote negative experience, then if you keep reliving that experience over and over and you look at it as a negative experience, you may continue to have those things if you don't learn a lesson. So I was divorced and I didn't fail. The relationship didn't fail. It was time for us to move on so we could grow as two individuals because we could no longer evolve together. It wasn't a good match any longer for us to stay together. So situations occurred that I felt were very, very negative at the time. But I realized afterwards something major had to change in order for us to move forward as individuals and bring forth our purpose in our lives and to be in more harmony and balance. So at first I was very in resistance in regards to it. And once I could step away and look at it more objectively rather than all the suffering and going through it subjectively with all those feelings and all those emotions, I saw the reason why things happened the way that they did. So we would separate, that we wouldn't continue to stay together in an unhappy marriage. Again, that's resilience, right? Can you see where I'm going with this conversation? Most of the time in our culture, we say something's good or bad, good or evil, and we have those polarities. However, when we can start looking at them as human experiences, whether good and bad, negative, positive, judgments around what we're going through, that can help to give us more resistance or more resilience also. I'll give you another example. I have been living in people's homes and renting bedrooms or spaces in people's homes since I have dealt with kidney disease and being a physical therapist and having that type of abundance in life where I could live by myself or live with my two children and have a good life. Well, now my abundance is different. However, I'm not making the income that I used to because I'm retired. So now what is helpful to me is to have a lower rent by living in people's homes. So I could look at that as a very negative experience, but I look at it as a learning experience. What can I learn by cohabitating with other people in a home, because I've never cohabitated with more than just family, my husband, my two kids, my parents, my grandparents. I've never gone to college where I had to live with a roommate, those kind of things. I never had a live-in that I didn't get married to. So this has given me an opportunity to explore how I can live in an environment with other people in the same space. And that's very unique. So again, I couldn't be in resistance and say, oh my God, I don't have the money that I used to, and I'm so poor, and I can't live by myself, and now I got to live with people, and oh God, I just want to live by myself, and I don't want to have to deal with people. So again, it's about your perception. What qualities you have, what can you gain from this experience, rather than looking at it as a negative experience. And right now, as we look into our world, this is in February of 2024, after COVID, life has changed significantly, just not in America, but around the world, our lives are changing. And what we're learning is, I don't hate to, I'm going to bring a little bit of history into this with resilience, because we all need it right now with how things are changing, and not only changing, but transforming. So we need this resilience right now. We all need to have this resilience. Otherwise, we're going to say, oh, life was so wonderful in the 70s and the 80s, and it's changed so much, and I don't like it now, and I can't get the same groceries that I used to. I don't have the money, and I can't afford rent, and they're trying to make it so homeless people are going to get jailed. And so when the world and the society, the culture is no longer working, is no longer serving humanity, serving the culture, serving the society, then major things have to change. And it's not only change, it's transformation. So at this point in our lives, right now in 2024, we need to learn how to be resilient. Otherwise, the weak will not survive. The strongest people that know how to take all their training and their education and life lessons over the years and know how to apply them to their world today. As the world is evolving and our economic system is changing, again, we will need resilience, because a new economic system will come into play, I believe. And if we believe it's going to go back to how it was, that's a fantasy. It's not going to go back to how it was. It's always going to evolve. And evolving means moving into the future with change and transformation. So act resilient, so you get better results that will make it easier on you and have things go more smoothly. Now, in a transformation, I'm not saying it's not going to be, that it's going to be easy. It may be very challenging. However, how challenging do you want it to be? Do you want to be resilient and have a little bit more peace? Or do you want to keep being resigned to, it's going to go back to how it was? It's got to go back to how it was before COVID. Nope. All right. Just like the seasons, it all changes. So when you can withstand something, when you can recover quickly in difficult and triggering situations, that's how you become resilient. So what other things can you practice in order to be resilient? It's good to have emotions and to express yourself and to move through emotions and feelings. However, when you get stuck in those emotions and those feelings, that's when you may not make wise decisions. That's when you may not have balance and harmony and peace in your world. So as you're learning to practice to regulate some of your emotions, let's talk about that. So if your boss comes to you and they say, you're not doing a good job at work because of this, this, and this, we're hearing that you're difficult to work with, that you don't get productivity done the way that management wants you to, you're not meeting those or exceeding those, and they're going through a list, and you're thinking you're doing a good job, and your boss is giving it to you, right? What do you think your emotions are going to be? Anger, frustrations. You may cry, you may be sad, it may get you depressed. So if you start speaking right away back at your boss rather than accepting it as information, this information could be valuable. It could be true. It could be true to your boss. It could be true to your coworkers. So what I do in those situations is I take the information in. I listen as carefully as I can, even though some of these emotions are coming up. I try not to show these emotions to my superior. And then if I have time to digest it, if the boss gives me time to digest it, then I can think about it and see what value I get out of that and what I need to toss aside, but to make this job, this career work in this situation, comply to what my boss is asking me to do. So that's how I would be resilient in that case. I'm trying to give you examples so you can see different situations that I've been in my life, not to tell you to do it that way, but to see how you can be resilient. So it's the behaviors, the words, my thought process that I'm showing you, not to do it like Beth Bador does it, the kidney goddess does it, because it may not be authentic to you. And in life, it's valuable to be your own person, to be your own CEO, to run your life and be authentic. Now, I'm not saying go to work and tell all your coworkers about all your problems and everything that's going on in your life and your sexuality and that you're divorced and that you're Catholic, whatever your religious beliefs are, your sexual habits are. No, I'm not saying spill it all out, spill your guts out. No, I'm saying to show up authentically. And if that workplace is putting you feel like you're being put in a box, then you have a choice. Are you going to stay in that environment or go to an environment that you're valued for who you are? Maybe it's time to be an entrepreneur. In this day in life, if you can go out and you choose to be an entrepreneur and do it with grace and knowledge and wisdom, I believe is the way to go, rather than going to work for big corporate that's pushing productivity and you have your cell phone and you have your computer, so they want to get a hold of you 24/7, when really you're just getting paid for an 8 to 5 job that they're no longer making it a 40-hour work week. It's a lot longer now for a lot of people because of all the technology they can reach us now. Before, like in the 70s, if we didn't want to talk to them on the phone, we don't answer the phone. We hang up the phone. If they're going to get a hold of us, they have to come over and knock on our door. And hopefully my boss won't come over and knock on my door and tell me to come to work, right? We had more privacy back there, but now we have technology. So corporate is using that to get more out of us as citizens and as workers, employees. So we need resilience and boundaries around that, don't we? At least I feel like I do. So let's see. What else can I tell you about resilience? Using your mindfulness. It's a way of a state of being. How are you being resilient? Are you aware and do you have intention around your resilience? What is your intention of how you proceed, how you act, how you behave, what words you say? Or are you just expressing yourself in the moment and then having to go back and try to correct some things because you said things in anger? Maybe you threw something across the room when your boss said, "You're fired." Well, I try never to break down bridges, because someday, even though I was fired, who knows what relationship that person and I might have in the future. And he might have not had any, or she may have not have any choice to fire us if it comes from higher up. And maybe it doesn't have anything to do with your performance, but it has to do with where the company is financially at that point in time. Give you another example for that. I was working in healthcare many, many years ago, and insurances and how healthcare works now is significantly different than when I started out. 30 plus years ago. Maybe it's getting close to 40 years ago. Wow, that's something to think about. So I was released from one of my jobs, and it had to do with a new insurance system was coming into play. And they really let a lot of us go, physical therapists and assistants, because they didn't know how the system was going to work. And they were in fear. The corporate people who made the decisions were in fear. So they decided to let a lot of us go and to use the PTAs on a more regular basis than the physical therapists because they were less expensive on the payroll. And then eventually they hired a lot of us back. So again, another time that I had to realize it wasn't a personal thing when I was let go. It was personal, but it wasn't a personal decision. It was corporate for the better of the corporation. So many people got released from their jobs at that point in time. And I thought I went into therapy because I'd always have a job. Well, little did I know that things can change in this world and I would be without a job for a little while. So I went into a different avenue rather than working in what's called a SNF setting, a long-term care setting. I went into home care and I was able to get a job pretty much right away. The people that were resistant to the change had to wait it out. Some of them took pay of a physical therapy assistant rather than of a PT because they wanted or needed to work to survive in this world. So again, it has to do with resilience. You need to be, these are some characters that I've come up with that helps when you want to be resilient. Self-awareness. Flexibility. Are you the type of person that's stubborn and always wants it a certain way and you don't want things to change? Or can you be flexible? Life will be a lot easier if you can be flexible. What are your coping skills like when it's an emergency, when it's a crisis situation? How do you handle those situations? What are your coping skills? Being courageous, being brave, doing something outside of the box that you thought maybe you'd never do. Having boundaries is so important. That's one of my life lessons for 2024. I feel that I'm a very giving, loving, kind person. And there are times that I will put other people's situations, feelings, material things in front of my values and my worth. So I'm learning more boundaries so I don't create some of the same patterns and experiences that I've had because I know my value and I know my worth. So I need to put into place and have more patterns with better boundaries. And when people come up to me and they push at me to say, you're not open-minded, you have all these boundaries, da-da-da-da-da. Yes, I do, because I know my worth and I know my value. And that's all I have to say. I don't have to continue that conversation. That's their thing. Put it back in their place. There are some wonderful people out on TikTok that talk about talking to people in uncomfortable dynamics. I wish I could remember his name. And he gives you words to help when you are coming up with uncomfortable conversations, how to express yourself with more grace and clarity than you may already have in your toolbox. So that's another way that you can learn to have the best outcomes. And the best outcomes will come when you have some of these qualities, all of these qualities. So persistence and resilience come from having been given a chance to work through difficult problems. Can you see that? Can you feel that? So it can take years, it can take lessons, it can take looking at your patterns to learn how to become resilient. Know your purpose. Know the type of experiences that you want, the relationships that you want. Find connections with people. Think about things as opportunities rather than challenges and struggles. What opportunities do I have here? Resolve and restore situations. Bring balance back. and learn to adapt. That's where flexibility comes in, correct? Can you see that? So what types of resilience are there? There's the physical, emotional, community, when you're living in a culture, and a spiritual, yes. So I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Think about that one. You don't want to be reduced by the situation. You want to learn by it, gain something. And that's another way that you can be resilient. Think about a story that you come up with. My divorce. And I made a big story. I told everybody the big story. Well, when you are hysterical, especially when I was first getting divorced, hysterical about something, it's usually historical. So the history goes back to, I believe, childhood and childhood trauma. And sometimes we get stuck in a certain age of how we behave as an adult unless we learn to work through it. So think about how you acted when you were 2 years old, right? The world was all about you. It was only about you, and you were learning to walk and run around, and you got into things and experienced stuff, and you didn't have as many words as you still needed. So you might cry and throw a tantrum. So as you get older and you're working into those situations, then you may find that you're acting the same way. So think about that. What in history is coming up when you're feeling hysterical? So you also want to think about the language that you're using, right? What language are you using when you're when you're being resilient? Are you speaking with grace and clarity, or are you speaking through your emotions and you're speaking negatively? What's happening around you that triggers you? And if something is triggering you, again, it could be hysterical to be historical. So when you're triggered by something, when you can step away and take a breath and you're being resilient, think about what was said, what happened that triggered you. Go back and peel the onion and see where that gets you. So today, I hope that you see some of the situations I've been in and how I've learned to be resilient and how you can be resilient. I've given you some tools, some examples. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, you can find me in so many different ways. You can find me through the internet at thecreativelifebydesign.com. You can find me through Facebook, Beth Bedore. I do a little bit on TikTok and on Instagram. I don't do too much on Twitter. I have an app called Teachable where I offer some courses and coaching, and I have podcasts. I am out there on Spotify. I have a YouTube channel. So there's so many different ways that you can reach out. And if you prefer to email me, you can email me at beth@thecreativelifebydesign.com. So I bless your day. Keep smiling. And I hope to have some conversations with you again. This was done today because I had scheduled some courses and conversations out on Facebook the last 2 months. And I was going through a move and some medical situations, and I had canceled them. So I wanted to provide this information. I'm going to put this out on Facebook, and it's going to be free information for you. Bye, guys. See you later.